So for the first tutorial, we're going to make a simple blockout of our experiment. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have a test folder, and I'm going to extract my build into it. The build's going to come with a couple starting points. If you're wanting to start with only the viewer and build everything around it, use viewer only. We're going to use viewer blank, which comes with a starter page and some other elements. So I'm going to rename this just to v.html, and I'm going to open index.html, and I'm going to edit it to now go to v.html instead of our former demo page. Okay, and let's also open this to edit. Okay, so before I'm going to start, I'm going to do a little housekeeping. I'm going to make sure my slides go in order from 1 to 20. So just fix this real quick. Okay, now I'm going to start up my server, localhost. Okay, so our blank page comes with a starter page with a bunch of different samples for input, and nothing else. Okay, so if we look at our starter page, we can see the viewer area, which is where the CT viewer is rendered, and we're going to see this question area with a form, and this is everything we're going to make is going to go in here because everything in the form will get packaged up and sent to the server when we're done. So the first thing I'm going to do is just open up a new spot to throw some text, and I'm going to copy my sample page, so starting at that consent page, going all the way down right before the submit fail page. Control C, Control V. Okay, and now I'm going to grab everything above this button line, so starting with my sample drop down, going all the way up, and all the way up to this button line. So now I will have a page with just 2 buttons on it. Nice. Okay, so this first button is just going to be a temporary button we'll have to let us jump to a specific page as we're building it, and the second button will actually be the button that the user gets to navigate through the experiment themselves. So I'm going to remove this alert here, which happens when you click the button. We're going to swap this out for code that will actually take us from page to page. So as we're making this page, we're going to use div elements and span elements. Spans are kind of like sentences. Things can happen on the same line as spans. Divs, on the other hand, are like blocks of like sort of paragraphs where they sort of take up a square of space and nothing else can be on the same line as them. So let's start out with our consent page. I'll just give it some little consenty text. Okay, and I'm just going to copy my consent page to make another page, and let's say they didn't consent. So whenever I make a new page, I need to remove this style equals display block. This shows the page, and so our first page needs to actually be shown, otherwise form pages by default are hidden. I'm also going to remove this button, our debug button. There's no reason to have it on anything other than the first page because it's just there for speed. And I'm going to change this text to nothing at the moment because I'm just going to use this as a template for other pages. Okay, so I'm going to have a thank you page. I'm going to have an instruction page if they do consent, a demographics form, and then a trial. And let's say the trial will also have an ending page, just letting them know that they finished the trial and they're about to move on to the next one. And I might have multiples of those. And I'm also going to have a comments page, and that will be the last thing before they submit the data. After they submit the data, they can see a debrief overview as well as other debrief pages for each individual trial. So let's rename these. So I'm going to do, oh no, this one is a thanks page. This one is an instruction page. Let's see. So for trials, I'm going to do just trial one like this, because I'm just going to have a similar syntax that will allow me to just do a quick keyword replace. Similar for copying and pasting these. Okay, so these IDs are what we use to move to the next page. So these need to be, IDs always need to be unique in an HTML document. So thanks. To help keep them unique, I'm prefixing all of my IDs that involve pages with a lowercase p. Okay. Now I'm going to do a quick keyword search in the document for p-consent. And I can only see the two, the one in my debug button and the one for the actual page. So that's good. That means I replaced all of them with new pages. So I'm going to remove the button that allows them to progress to the next page from the thank you page, because this would only be something they'd get to if they hit no on consent. So there's really nowhere for them to go after that. So just thank them for their time. And I'm going to add a little bit of text to every other page, just so that way I can see which page I'm on as I progress in the browser. In HTML, you'll use this BR tag for line breaks. And I can use a H and then a number for a certain type of heading. So H2 is kind of a medium-sized heading. H1 would be larger, 3 would be smaller. Again, I'm keeping the syntax similar, so I can just copy and paste my trial pages. If I want to make something bold, I can use a B tag. If I want to make it underlined, I can use a U. Okay. So now let's actually make them be able to move from page to page. So in this onClick event, we're going to add a go to page. And this go to page will take a string. It'll take the name of the next page, so p instruction. Okay, so now when they click on it, they will go to the instruction page. When they get to the instruction page, if they click on the next button, they will go to the demographics page. When they get to demographics and they click, they will go to the trial. Yeah. But we want to go to a page and show the viewer. Okay, so P trial 1. And this will be on the first image index on the first slice. So this image index is what we specified in our slide dim.txt. It's the first number there. So we have 1 and 2. So I'm going to make a quick copy of my trial page. And I'm going to replace trial 1 with trial 2. So I'm going to hit this in selection. So trial 1, trial 2. Okay. Okay, and now we're going to take our go to page with viewer, and when we go from the trial 1 end page, we're going to want to go to the second trial, which is at the second image index. When we finish with a trial, we want to go to the end page. So and we want to hide the viewer. So when we hide the viewer, this is what it would look like. So this is the viewer shown. So basically hiding the viewer gives our form area a lot more of the screen to draw things on. Okay, so when we finish trial 2, we want to go to trial 2 end. And then when we finish with the trial 2 end page, we'll go to comments. When we get done with our comments, we're going to end up sending data, but for now we're not going to deal with that. We're just going to go to our debrief page. Okay, and I'm not going to mess with the debrief pages at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to refresh my page. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-I to open up my console. And let's go to our next page. And I apparently have a typo. Okay, let's save that, refresh. Okay, so now we're on our instructions page, demographics, trial 1, that's the correct image, trial 1 end, trial 2 also with the correct image, trial 2 end, and comments, and going straight to our debrief. So that comments page is the last thing they do before they send data. So we want to make it look a little, we want to make that button look a little different, so we're going to, instead of having this RARR, which is right arrow, we're going to write submit. And we no longer want it to be the arrow font, so I'm just going to remove that. And for the debrief pages, we're going to have the debrief main page take us to different sub-debrief pages. And the sub-debrief pages will take us back to the main debrief page. So let's take the button, and I'm going to stick this at the top. I'm going to hit a line break because things can happen on the same line as buttons. And instead of right arrow, I'm going to do LARR for left arrow. And so this will kind of be like a back button. So we want to go back to our PDBF main. And I'm going to remove the forward arrow from that. And just like we did with our trial, I'm going to make a quick little clone of my page. Okay, and then we're going to have some buttons on our main debrief page. And just like the submit button, it's not going to be an arrow, so let's remove the arrow font, and I'm going to type trial 1. Okay, and add a line break. Okay, so, let's add a go-to page, and go to our sub debrief page. Copy that. Okay, and now I'm going to remove the normal arrow for progressing in pages. Okay, so let's save and refresh. Okay, so now I have my new submit button and debrief in bold. I need to change that to trial 2. So PDBF1, PDBF2. Okay, so that looks good. Let me just change this to trial 2. Okay, and now you have the flow for your experiment. You might want to add a little bit of text describing what the participant will have to do in each trial or something. And then you would send this off to whoever is in charge of making sure your flow is good. If you need to change your first page, let's just copy our consent page. And we'll remove the style display block from our actual consent page, and let's call this an intro page. Okay, I'm going to remove my debug button from my consent page, since the debug button only makes sense on the first page. I'm going to make the next button on this page go to consent. So you might want a page in front of your consent page if you want to specifically spell out who you're looking for, so that way people know that they're not qualified for the experiment and leave before they move any further. We aren't actually done adding this page though. In order to make it our first page, it will show up, but then when we hit next, it won't hide itself. So in order to actually make that work, we need to go to our scripts and common.js. Strange. What the heck? Okay. And on current page, we're going to make it p-intro. Save that. And very bizarre. Refresh. ID there. Okay. Now let's make a little branch on our consent page. So either they consent or they don't. So if they don't, they'll go to the thanks page. If they do, then they'll go to the instruction page, which will carry them on to every other page. So to have a branch, we're going to have radio buttons. So let's go to where you pasted the sample page and go to the sample radio buttons. I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to open up a new file and paste it in, and I'm going to take this sample radio input and I'm going to replace it with p-consent continue. And this is just going to be what I name this group of radio buttons. So replace all. Okay, and now let's change our question to, would you like to continue? And the name with radio buttons binds all the radio buttons together, so you can see these all have the same name. They also make the key value pair that gets sent to the server. So this will be the name and this will be the value. So let's change our labels here to yes and no. And likewise, when this is checked, we want the value to get sent to be yes, and when this is checked, the value to get sent will be no. And we don't need an other, so I'm just going to remove this entire span, and we don't need to shuffle our yes and no radio button. Ooh. We don't need to shuffle our yes or no radio buttons. Oops. So I'm just going to, because I removed my other, I will now only check 1 and 2 to make sure they're checked. go back to v.html after copying that, and in my consent page, let's paste it in, fix my line breaks, fix my tabs, and let's see what this looks like. Okay, so let's move it down and over a little bit. It makes sense that this would be a long consent form, so we want to make this obvious for the user. So to move it down, I'm just going to add some more line breaks. And then to move it over, I'm going to add a margin to the div that it's in. So style equals margin. We're going to go with the left. And we're going to add 3 em lengths. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. There we go. Now let's actually make this branch do something. So basically we're going to see if one is checked, in which case we go to instruction, and if the other is checked, we go to thanks. So to see if something's checked, I'm going to use if, and then a $sign function. So $, open parenthesis, open quote, and then dot checked. Okay, so if something is checked, go to page P instruction, else. If something else is checked, go to page P thanks. Okay, so if no is checked, so this P consent continue, 2. Then go to P thanks. If P consent continue 1 is checked, go to my instruction page. And make sure you don't change these IDs to reflect the value at all. It might make sense to name these something more human readable, but we need these to be in this format when we are validating them in the third tutorial. Okay, so if I hit yes, I go to my instruction page. If I don't hit anything, I don't go anywhere. If I hit no, I go to my thank you page. So we're done.